So the 2026 annual World Economic Forum conference just kicked off yesterday, and it's a very special conference because it's the first one in over 50 years that man, Klaus Schwab, is not the acting CEO of the World Economic Forum, but it looks as if his disciples, the new co-chairs and CEOs of the World Economic Forum, they certainly picked up the memo of what Klaus wants for the world, because all of the clips coming out of day one of the conference in Davos were talking about how they're going to limit how you can hold your money, and they're all talking about how they're going to limit your free speech. And well, let's listen to the opening remarks from the new CEO of the World Economic Forum to see what else they've got planned for you.
The World Economic Forum is not about responding to current events. It's about orchestrating the right conditions that enable us to move forward.
So that's the new CEO of the World Economic Forum openly saying we don't react, we orchestrate the conditions that we want to change the world in the way that we want to change it. And let's listen to the other new co-chair of the World Economic Forum, Larry Fink.
For many people, this meeting feels out of step. We hear all about the elites. How does an established institution make a difference in an era of deep institutional mistrust? And there's some truth to the critique. I believe in this forum for a long time. I certainly wouldn't be leading this if I didn't believe that we can change and make the world better. But it's also obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next. If the World Economic Forum is going to be useful going forward, it has to regain that trust.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors.
So that was Larry Fink previously talking about how companies must change their behavior. But he came out today on day one of the Davos conference, and he said capitalism must change or lose legitimacy. Again, I'll remind you, Larry is the new co-chair of the World Economic Forum, taking over from Klaus Schwab, who we listened to in the introduction clip. And of course, Klaus Schwab has written the book Stakeholder Capitalism. So while Klaus Schwab might not be the acting CEO today in 2026, it sounds as if his disciples have certainly kind of picked up the baton, and they're really trying to enact and make a reality the vision that Klaus has been talking about for decades. So Larry also mentioned today that AI could potentially widen the inequality in the world the same way that globalization did. And Fink called for Davos to listen more to ordinary communities, not just the elites. Now, of course, what's really interesting about Fink and globalization is that article that we covered for you guys yesterday. Most people don't know that about 65 days before Larry Fink was appointed or chosen to be the next co-chair of the World Economic Forum, back in June 2025, he published this article in the Financial Times that nobody talked about, where he openly said that in a new era of globalization, markets need to channel citizen savings into local businesses and infrastructure. So again, it looks as if Larry Fink is picking up all of the narrative put down by Klaus Schwab and the WEF. They want to come for your money, they want to steal retail savings, and they want to put that into their own priorities. Another billionaire came out today on day one of the conference, also talking about AI in some really strange ways. Let's listen to what Larry Ellison thinks that AI might do for all of us.
Tell us a bit about what, because you're right at the forefront of this revolution, what it means for what government should do in terms of its digital infrastructure, digital ID, data centers, and so on.
The first thing a country needs to do is to unify all of their data so it can be consumed and used by the AI model. You have to take all of your healthcare data, your diagnostic data, your electronic health records, your genomic data. The NHS in the UK has an incredible amount of population data, but it's fragmented. It's not easily accessible by these AI models. We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform. So we provide context. When we want to ask a question, we've provided that AI model with all the data they need to understand our country. So that's the big step. That's kind of the missing link. We need to unify all of the national data, put it into a database where it's easily consumable by the AI model, and then ask whatever question you like.
So that was, of course, tech billionaire Larry Ellison talking about the advantages that AI might have for the future. But again, where did this narrative begin? It started with Klaus Schwab when he said things like this.
Au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans nos topos. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital.
Now, everything that we've seen come out from this day one in Davos, it's all reading along the same script. It's all talking about how these elites will track our financial transactions more, and they're all talking about how they're going to monitor everything we say online. It's almost as if the Minority Report movie created 25 years ago is kind of like what these tech elite billionaires are trying to create for 2030 for all of us to be living in. Again, we will remind you, the World Economic Forum released their Global Risk Report on Wednesday this week, just 4 days before the conference officially kicked off on Monday, and they said that the biggest risks impacting the world today are misinformation and disinformation.
And geoeconomic confrontation actually stays at the very top, but it's followed closely by mis and disinformation and then societal polarization. But following pretty closely behind is, again, mis and disinformation, because you've got, for example, mis and disinformation as one of the key additional risks. And as technology advances, as the risks from deep fakes, for example, rise, and we looked at this a couple of years ago, what that means, for example, for elections, you're starting to see there that mis and disinformation is growing and fueling the fire of societal polarization.
An erosion of trust through mis or disinformation.
And I know this sounds really conspiratorial and scary, but governments from all around the world are talking about this, which is why we need to be paying attention.
Body cameras. We completely redesigned body cameras. Our body cameras cost $70, and the camera's always on. You don't turn it on and off. And by the way you turn it on, you can't turn it on. I'm going to the bathroom. Oracle, I need 2 minutes to take a bathroom break, and we'll turn it off. The truth is, we don't really turn it off. I'm going to lunch with my friends. Oracle, I need an hour for privacy with lunch with my friends. God bless. We won't listen in unless there's a court order. But it's interesting. But we transmit the video back to headquarters. So headquarters and AI is constantly monitoring the video. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. These are the kind of systems the next generation systems we can build using AI.
Speaking of the Minority Report, let's listen to what a UK politician right now is warning of as we are watching dedicated police forces and units in the UK literally going and door knocking on people's homes because they think they might say something naughty online.
I never thought I'd be recommending that government ministers should go and see Hollywood blockbusters, but I do recommend ministers and indeed police chiefs go and watch Minority Report. Why? It's a film that dramatizes the dangers of pre-crime, trying to predict crimes before they happen. That's precisely what the police and government are now suggesting, using AI to predict who is likely to be a criminal. Well, I'm sorry, but AI makes mistakes. Around the world, a large number of people have been accused wrongly of crimes because facial recognition has misrecognized them. That's AI going wrong. And in other areas, in fact in this country, AI is trying to predict people who might be criminals and gets it right 53% of the time, i.e. half the time. It's just about as good as tossing a coin. Now, of course, murder, violent crimes, sex crimes are all very serious, and you must do what you can to prevent them. But because they're serious, being accused of one, if you're not guilty, can wreck your life. Lose your job, destroy your reputation, destroy your family, destroy your future. And so we must be very, very careful and not use AI to try and accuse people of things they've not done, because that's where this policy is going.
So again, some people might be asking, why? Why are our governments so obsessed with limiting free speech online? Why are countries like the UK and now Australia and even Canada all coming out in the same month and racing to launch a digital ID? Well, I'll remind you, it's not just those three Western countries, it's countries all across Europe. And if we have a look at the race, this is the timeline, looking at how many countries have moved from implementing a digital ID to now a digital form of money like a CBDC, we can see a clear acceleration in the 5 years post 2020. That's, of course, the year that Klaus Schwab calls the Great Reset.
The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. It has laid bare the fundamental lack of social cohesion, fairness, inclusion, and equality. Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era. But we have another choice. We can build a new social contract. In short, we need a great reset. We have to mobilize all constituents of our global society to work together. We must not miss this unique window of opportunity.
Now, the reason why I think we're seeing this acceleration in what Klaus calls the Great Reset is simply because of these two charts we're going to look at right now. Gold and silver are both going parabolic. Gold has doubled in the past 12 months. Silver's nearly tripled in the past 3 months alone. And both of these precious metals are screaming that the monetary system is breaking. And people are looking to get outside of the monetary system. They don't trust the CBDCs and the digital monies that are being pushed down the pipeline. We know that China's CBDC has an expiration rate on it, and the CBDC that's about to be forced on the 1 billion people living in Europe, well, their leader is openly praising China's CBDC.
A digital currency where it has been piloted, and there is only one which is clearly now launched in a very small country, but it is piloted on a fairly large scale in China, is of use and of service to all citizens. So it is not something that is good for the elite, or is good for the young, or is good for some versus others. If it is well done and if it is well implemented, it would be of service to all citizens.
Still can't believe Christine Lagarde hasn't been forced to delete that video of her praising China's central bank digital currency that not only has an expiration rate, but is intertwined with this social credit score. And I believe that's going to be rolled out in all of these Western countries once they've got everybody onboarded onto the digital ID. This is again why we saw that insane letter come out in England this week, where a former insider of the central bank of the UK is openly saying the UK needs to prepare for an alien disclosure because this might create a banking crisis. I know how insane that is, but let's go to the letter and have a look at the very last line in her letter that was sent to the Bank of England governor. Let's read this. We can see the former Bank of England insider said precious metals might lose their status as perceived safe assets if people speculate that new spacefaring technologies will soon increase the supply. So again, if I were to just speculate here about why Miss McCaw released this letter this week when she did, warning about how an alien invasion could trigger a bank collapse, I think the true kind of meaning of this letter is, most people know the analogy, you can kill two birds with one stone. That's what this letter does. It covers their ass for when there is a banking crisis. They can just blame it on the aliens, but it also tries to detract from the massive gold and silver rally that we just showed you. Again, gold and silver going parabolic screams that people are wanting to get outside of the monetary system. And if they're trying to spread some fear, uncertainty, and doubt about aliens increasing the supply of precious metals, this is an attempt to slow down the rally that cannot be controlled. Again, they are freaking out over alternatives that gets you outside of the system. Again, what are those alternatives? Gold, silver, but they're not the only ones. Let's listen to what Christine Lagarde thinks about Bitcoin when asked about it in this interview.
It is a speculative. It's a speculative asset. By any account. I mean, when you look at the most recent developments upward and now the most recent downward trend, for those who had assumed that it might turn into a currency, terribly sorry, but this is an asset and it's a highly speculative asset, which has conducted some funny business and some interesting and totally reprehensible money laundering activity. I think that there are criminal investigations that have taken place that I'm sure will continue to take place that demonstrate it very clearly. And there has to be regulations, and this has to be applied and agreed upon. It's a matter that needs to be agreed at a global level, because if there is an escape, that escape will be used.
Again, Bitcoin is the escape valve, but it's only the escape valve if you buy it and if you put it in your own self-custody. That's why I've been encouraging you guys for years, do not put your Bitcoin on an exchange, put it into your own self-custody. Again, this is why I love the hardware wallets created by Ledger and Trezor. Unless you own Bitcoin in one of these, you don't truly own it. So again, if you do want to get your hands on a hardware wallet, check out the link down below. And I'll remind you, trusting BlackRock with your Bitcoin, it's a terrible idea. We can see they already own 3% of the Bitcoin supply, and they said this about Bitcoin recently. BlackRock published this little feel-good video on Twitter, and this video was retweeted by Michael Saylor. You can see BlackRock explains Bitcoin. And what's super strange about this video is you can see that there are subtitles at the bottom of the video in white text with a black box around the text. Now, what's super strange is there's a little section in this video where two boxes of text pop up at the bottom of the video, and the words in the white box, they weren't said explicitly in the video, but they were more of a disclaimer where BlackRock said, oh, well, there's actually no guarantee that Bitcoin's 21 million supply cap will not be changed. Again, why would BlackRock say that? BlackRock is supposed to be championing the ideals about Bitcoin. Larry Fink's been going on a media campaign saying how it's digitizing gold, how it's hope, how it's an asset you buy when you're fearful of your government. But is BlackRock maybe suggesting that they might try to change the most important and most valuable rules of Bitcoin? That is the fact that it's limited to 21 million coins. I don't know, but I think it's interesting. So I wouldn't be trusting BlackRock as far as you can throw them, because the first day of this World Economic Forum conference has kind of proved Larry Fink is championing the ideals of Klaus Schwab. He's the new CEO and the co-chair of the World Economic Forum for one very important reason. He's been chosen to do the job, and he has agreed to pull the party line. I still can't believe he's openly talking about totalitarian governments, and people still trust this guy. There's 900,000 Bitcoin custodied by Larry Fink. I'm telling you, this man is planning a Bitcoin attack. This is the Bitcoin trap. Again, please, guys, it's so simple. You buy one of these, you put your Bitcoin in a hardware wallet, and then don't make the mistake that most people make. Don't write down your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words on paper. We don't do that. We rip paper up and we put our Bitcoin on something that's actually going to last for generations, and that is titanium. Again, I always encourage you guys, go and take advantage of the winter sale that Stampseed is running, and you can get nearly 30% off anything you want to buy from Stampseed if you stack the winter sales with the promo code Luke15. Again, titanium plates is the only thing that you should be putting your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words onto, and the stamping kits from Stampseed, super easy to use. So again, that's how you can give Larry Fink the big FU, by draining your Bitcoin off the exchanges and taking self-custody before these Orwellian bureaucrats at the World Economic Forum will remove your custody rights, because they have been talking about this for a very long time. This is the entire thesis or playbook of stakeholder capitalism. They don't want you owning anything. While we're talking about Klaus Schwab, it just reminded me of another clip that I wanted to play for you guys. Let's not forget what Klaus Schwab predicted about a cyber pandemic.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole. The COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber attack. To use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity to reflect on the lessons the cybersecurity community can draw and improve our preparedness for a potential cyber pandemic.
I think that framing is really important to be aware of, because when I was looking at the speeches given on day one of the conference, this was on Monday the 19th, I saw this speech here. It was titled, "The Anxious Generation." This was by Jonathan Haidt. He's a social psychologist, and his entire speech was talking about how to tackle a mental health pandemic. And as you can see from how the World Economic Forum titled this little section, how to find happiness in an AI age. I think this is a lot of the signal here. A lot of these elites are trying to fearmonger people about AI and why we need a digital ID to keep the kids safe. But again, just remember, none of this is about keeping the kids safe. These bureaucrats want complete control. And again, like we always talk about, the digital ID, it's a good start. Once you get somebody onboarded with a digital ID and you can see everything they say online and that they text their friends, this is like being put in a digital cage. You're in the cage, and this is why countries like the UK are trying to remove encryption. But the problem with a cage is if you're still able to move your money around, you can escape the country. This is why right now the UK government is having such difficulty trying to trap the people in the country, because 15,000 millionaires are leaving the country every year. And that's because they can still walk out of that digital cage. They're taking their wealth to countries like Dubai or Paraguay or maybe Thailand, and they're going and setting up their business and their life elsewhere because they can still move their money outside of the system. This is where the digital key comes into this little prison analogy. Because once these governments copy what China's done and they roll out a social credit score, they roll out the digital ID, which is your prison cage, and then they also roll out the digital money that acts as the key that locks the cage, and you're trapped in there forever. This is why people who are not on the government's side in China are trapped in the country because they can't leave. Their social credit score and their digital ID has essentially locked their bank accounts. And again, we all know the Chinese CBDC has an expiration rate. And this is what the bureaucrats in Davos right now on day one of the conference are continually coming back to. All of their narratives, all of their talking points, they all come back to more control and how do we limit free speech and how do we stop people using alternatives like Bitcoin, gold, and silver. And we can see that they're getting desperate if they're having to write hit pieces about how an alien invasion is going to devalue gold and silver because it's going to increase its supply. I think it's insane. I think it's nuts. I think I've seen enough World Economic Forum content for one day. I'm going to pause this video here. I'm going to come back tomorrow with another deep dive on everything that happened on day 2 of the conference. We should get access to a lot more clips. So again, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you get notified when that video drops tomorrow. And with all that said, I'll link yesterday's deep dive somewhere around there for you guys to check out. And with all that said, I'll see you in the next one.